إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. The topic today, my dear Muslims, titled Mukhtasar Ahkaam Al Janaa'iz, and this was a topic delivered by our Sheikh Umar Bakr Muhammad many years ago, in fact, and you'll see from the notes, there's one part mentioned, and obviously it was collected by one of his students. And this is first and foremost, just to make clear, this is a general summary, so it's not very heavily detailed, but it's to the purpose of to give the main important points really about some of the rulings regarding when people pass away, regarding funerals, inshallah. And maybe at a future date, inshallah, maybe we can go into more details, inshallah. So firstly, to start with as a way of, just as an introduction, inshallah, I just want to mention Surah Anbiya, Surah 21 verse 35. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم كل نفس ذائقة الموت ونبلكم بالشر والخير فتنة وإلينا ترجعون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this verse that every soul is going to taste death, and we shall make a trial of you with evil and with good, and to us you will be returned. So no doubt, my dear Muslims, death will come to every single one of us, whether we are a king or whether we are a beggar, whether we are black or whether we are white, whether we are even Muslim or whether we are kuffar. Death will come to every single one of us. And even in fact, subhanAllah, death will come to the angel of death, Malikul Maut. After he has taken everyone's soul, Allah will say to him that you have fulfilled your purpose, so let death come to you, and Allah will take his soul. And obviously, my death, the death from this life, obviously it's not the end. You know, sometimes maybe if you ever sometimes when you speak to some of these kuffar in the dawah, subhanAllah, it makes you appreciate your own iman when you hear some of the kufr that they come out with. And I remember I was debating with one kafir guy. I said to him, like, what do you believe is going to happen to you after you pass away? And he said, well, I just believe I'm going to die and then there's nothing else after this. I'm saying, what, you believe like, you know, you're just going to, people just die and then, you know, over millions of years they become fossil fuels essentially, and that's just the end. SubhanAllah. And he said, yeah, I don't believe nothing, there is nothing else after I die. SubhanAllah. And you know, this is the same kufr that the people in the past used to say. Allah SWT mentioned this in Surah Mu'minun, Surah 23 verse 37. And it mentions here in the translation, it says, the kuffar, they said, there is nothing but the life of this world, and we die and we live and we are not going to be resurrected. SubhanAllah. Same people, the same kuffar of today come with that same. Obviously shaitan has led them astray, you know. SubhanAllah, if you died as a kafir, for there to be nothing would have been great for them, subhanAllah, just for there to be nothing. But in reality, there is the hellfire for them, those who die in their disbelief. And that was obviously, it's a part of our iman that we believe in the day of resurrection. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. In the day of resurrection, in the day of judgment. And just to briefly share with you, I remember reading a famous book by Ibn Kathir, the lives of the prophets. A very good book, inshallah, if you can get your hand on it, about the lives of the prophets. I remember when I was reading about the story of Adam alayhi salam, obviously the first prophet. And I just quickly share with you, inshallah, just a nice narration here, but it's relevant to the topic. Narrated by Abdullah ibn Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he narrated that Ubay ibn Ka'ab, he said that when Adam's death was near, he said to his children, "O my children, indeed I feel an appetite for the fruits of paradise." So they went away searching for what Adam had requested. And they met with the angels, who had with them his shroud and what he was to be embalmed with. And they said to them, I Adam alayhi salam's children, "O children of Adam, what are you searching for? What do you want? Where are you going?" And they said, "Our father is sick, and he has an appetite for the fruits of paradise." And the angels, they said to them, "Go back, your father is going to meet his end soon." So they returned with those angels, and when the wife of Adam salam, Hawa, saw them, she recognized them. And she tried to hide herself behind Adam. And he said to her, "Leave me alone, I came before you. Do not go between me and the angels of my Rabb, my Lord." So they took his soul, embalmed him and wrapped him up, dug the grave and laid him in it. They prayed on him and put him in his grave, saying, "O children of Adam, this is your tradition at the time of death." So obviously, my dear Muslims, today inshallah, as we go through some of the rites of the dead and the burial, obviously it's something that it's not just in the Sharia of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. From going back to the time of obviously Adam alayhi salam. See, we are not like the kuffar. You see, subhanallah, when you look at how some of the in the deen of some of the kuffar, what they do to the dead, it is shocking, bro. If you ever seen that clip on YouTube where those Buddhists, subhanallah, up in around that area in Nepal and all that, have you ever seen that clip where when the dead pass away, they leave them out, they cut their skin off and they leave them out in the field, and what do vultures? They come and start eating the body, and that is that is their belief system in their deen, subhanallah. If you look towards the Hindus, what do? Subhanallah, they burn the dead. And if you think that is shocking, you know, one of the people who really follow orthodox Hinduism, one of the things they say that if the husband passes away, the wife has to be killed with him as well. Subhanallah. And sometimes the wife is also burnt, even though she's not dead or anything, because the husband passed away. My dear Muslim, and you know the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the dead feel as much pain as the living. So, my dear Muslim, that dead that has passed away, even if you were to pinch them, if you were to hit them, if you were to burn them, they would feel it. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. That's why I say when you learn about some of the acts of the kuffar, you think, alhamdulillah, Allah made me Muslim. Subhanallah. And obviously, like I say, if you ever seen that clip, my dear Muslim, what can I say? Apart from this, is give shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has made us Muslims. Coming back to the topic, so the following notes, inshallah, what we're going to go through today is a brief summary of the funeral process for any Muslim who passes away. And it is intended for those who already have a general idea of how the funeral process is done, i.e. they know all the du'as and the general process of burying a person. But the need for reminding certain points. The funeral of a deceased Muslim is farad kifaya. It is a communal obligation and must be done within 3 days, or else the whole community will be sinful. Just briefly for those who may not know about Fard Kifaya, meaning what? That obviously if a Muslim passes away, it is their right that we give them a proper janazah, we wash them and we give them an Islamic burial. Now what Fard Kifaya means, that if some Muslims in the community do that, then that lifts the burden from everyone else. No, everyone else will not be accountable. However, if like I mentioned, if after 3 days nobody does it, then every single person, Muslim in the community, will be sinful. Yeah. So the Fard Kifaya is, if it's an obligation that if some Muslims do it, it lifts the burden of the sin from everyone else. Yeah. But obviously, like I said, it mentions here, it has a time limit. So some people have to do it. It can't be like, everyone can't be like, Lord, I'll leave it to someone else. Let someone else do it. Someone must do it. And I remember, subhanAllah, a true incident that happened, in the UK, when Sheikh Umar was in the UK many years ago. There was a case where a Muslim had passed away, and he was in the heat of summer. It was summer as well, and he was in the back of one of those funeral cars, and he's been there for, I think the brother narrated it, something like 3 days in the back of this car. And the reason being is because the funeral company, they didn't get their money. Now my dear Muslims, obviously this is unacceptable. And obviously when the Sheikh heard, subhanAllah, he obviously he was angry that obviously this is unacceptable. He paid from his own pocket to make sure that Muslim is buried immediately. Obviously my dear, if subhanAllah, obviously nowadays people have taken many aspects of the deen as business. If it's the case, even of a Muslim, let's say you can't get the money together, let's say they only got half the money. SubhanAllah, for the sake of Allah, bury him, inshallah, so your money will come later, or the cost or whatever. You cannot just leave a Muslim and say, look, I'm not burying him until until the fees are paid. SubhanAllah. And obviously the Muslim community as well, they must, if let's say the family can't afford it, the deceased did not leave any wealth, the community should come together, and put money together, subhanAllah. Obviously nowadays in the UK it can be quite pricey, depending on where you bury. But subhanAllah, the community should come together, and people have wealth, my dear Muslim. People have wealth for dunya matters, but when it comes to the rights of the Muslim, many people, they behave as if they don't. But in reality, many people, the people should come together, and that's not a valid excuse to say that, look, the money hasn't been paid, so we leave the dead in the coffin or whatever. SubhanAllah. That's why I remember my own parents used to talk about back home, where they're from Bangladesh. They said if someone passed away and he didn't have any land, no place to, other people would give a piece of graveyard in their own land as like a sadaqah. SubhanAllah. Great reward. And it is important, my dear Muslim, obviously, as well, we study the deen, and we study about funerals, about all aspects of our deen. Obviously, those who have been listening to the Pal Talk here, obviously we cover different topics, and today I'm obviously covering this topic because of passing away of one Muslim, one of the brothers' fathers, one of the brothers who attends there regularly. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive him and give him Jannatul Firdaus, inshallah. And because of that, that's why I found these notes. It'd be good reminder for us all. Another incident, and this is important as well, we study the deen, my dear Muslim, because I'm going to narrate you another true story. And so maybe some of you have heard this. There was once a case where a Muslim passed away in the UK, and his son had cremated him. His son had created me. Now, obviously, my dear Muslim, we can only guess as to how on earth something like this happened. And do not be surprised if it's a fact, because the level of ignorance nowadays amongst the ummah, especially those living in Darul Kufr, the absence of people living under the Sharia for many decades. People do not even know basic ABC Islam. They don't know, maybe he didn't even know that we're not allowed to cremate the body, subhanallah. But he cremated his own father. That's why, my dear Muslims, it's important that we seek knowledge and we teach our children and we give them good Islamic education. And that's why, like I said, my dear Muslims, as well, do not be surprised when a Muslim is living in Dar al-Kufr, but he may not even know something that's known by necessity, basic ABC Islam. Because you never been taught Islam properly. He just taught the basics, or maybe never even got an Islamic education. Maybe rather than living amongst the Muslim community, he thought, I'll go and live in the countryside, with the sheep, with the kuffar. Live amongst the Muslims, subhanallah. Live in the Muslim community. Where are you going to go Jummah? Live amongst the Muslim community. So that's why, my dear Muslims, that's why sometimes excuse of ignorance can be given on something that is known by necessity. If he was a new Muslim, or someone living far away from the Muslim and didn't have access to the knowledge. Yeah? So in general, when we say, if a Muslim was living in let's say, for example, in Darul Islam, for many decades, it's always surrounded by Islam, etc., the Sharia implemented, you can't really give him an excuse if he didn't know something known by necessity from Islam. That's why we say someone maybe living in the UK, he could have an excuse for not knowing something basic of the deen, because many people, they never had a proper Islamic education, and they're living amongst the kuffar in some areas. Alhamdulillah, here in London, where there's a lot of Muslims, but if you go to other parts of the UK, some parts you hardly find a Muslim. The first thing we're going to talk about, inshallah, is about washing the body. Okay, and this is before washing the body, sorry. And this is a very important point, my dear Muslims. Most of these notes are from the talk the Sheikh delivered, and a few bits I've added of some of the examples that I recall. First and foremost, before washing the body, you must confirm that he or she is dead. Now you might be thinking, that's obvious, you can't bury a live person. It is very important, my dear, to confirm that they are dead. And there are 10 signs of death according to the Sunnah. And this is a very important point. According to the Sunnah, not according to the Kuffar's ECG machine. Because I'll tell you another true story. Again, narrated a true story where the brothers, they knew personally. Again, incident with the Sheikh. There was a man who up in the north of England, Muslim man, he passed away. And he was in hospital, and obviously they're going to take him away, etc. And they probably put him in the fridge or something. But anyway, the family, they were insistent that, look, don't take him now. We've got a scholar, he's coming. And obviously the Sheikh was in London then, I believe. And it was obviously last minute thing. And the Sheikh, they asked him to come up and to see the body, etc., to see the family. And obviously it's very hard for the Sheikh last minute, etc. But subhanallah, knowing Sheikh Umar, he made that journey. And when he went to see the body, a very ajib thing happened. The Sheikh, Sheikh Umar, he said, I don't see all the signs of death on this man. And the kuffar doctors, they were like annoyed at who this guy come in and saying. And the Sheikh and the family, they convinced the doctors to leave the person until the morning, and if they still believe that he's passed away, then they can take him. Because what the kuffar, they do, they use their machine, maybe ECG, etc. So they'll see no blip on their machine. So that is their indication of death. But there are many people where the machine may not give any reading, but they're still alive. There are unusual circumstances where someone may not have a reading even come up on the ECG machine, but they're not passed away. Many people like that, later on they've woken up. Many people have been in coma maybe for many months, and they've woken up. So the ECG machine, the fact that it does not have a reading, that's not what we take to, or no pulse. That's not what we take as an indication that someone has passed away. This is a very important point. And this man, subhanallah, the next day, he started showing signs of life. He started showing signs of life. And this brother, he made a full recovery. And I believe it was that same year, he went to Hajj with some of the brothers. After the doctors had certified this man is dead. Because this man is alim. And we'll go through the 10 signs of death. When he looked at the body, he did not see all the signs of death. And that's why, my dear Muslim, our view and outlook on life and on matters needs to be always based on Quran and Sunnah. Not what Bob and Jane told us. Not what the kuffar taught us in their schools and what their books say. Rather, we follow the Quran and the Sunnah. So obviously, subhanallah, how many people the doctors might, it's scary when you think how many of these kuffar doctors are certifying dead because there's no ECG, signal, there's no pulse, and it's, oh yeah, he's passed away. The 10 signs from the Sunnah to look out for when a person has passed away. The eyes, they're staring forward. The lips, they drop in. The jaws, they collapse. The two shoulders drop back. The hips spread out. The feet collapse. Relax. The stomach has inflated. The skin becomes bluish blackish. And a bad smell from the body emerges. I believe it's called jifa. And the head is separated from the body. If someone, obviously head is missing, definitely they're not alive. So if you do not see any of these signs on the person, consider him or her not to be dead. Even if, for example, the life support machine states otherwise. This is what the notes is saying. So those are the signs, my dear Muslims, to look out for. Forget what Dr. Kafir is saying, that look, there's no signal on the life support machine. These are the signs from the Sunnah we need to look out for. And only when you see all those signs, you can say this person has passed away. So if it's confirmed the person has passed away, we should close the deceased person's eyes. We should massage their joints in his body in order to prevent the joints from becoming very stiff. This will enable an easier process of washing the body. Point number 4, cover the whole body except the face. The body should not be demonstrated to the public. Only close relatives may see the body if they wish. And mentioned they're not, except if he was a mujahid, in which case other people may have the permit to see him or her. But the aura must still be covered. Okay. That's why when you see obviously some of those horrific videos coming out from Sham, obviously, my dear Muslim, it's important that the aura is still covered. I remember a video came out where there was a sister and some parts of the aura was not covered. And obviously the brother at the time, when he poured it on, he didn't realize, obviously, to make the ummah aware. But obviously the aura must be covered, my dear Muslim. It cannot be displayed. Inshallah, now coming on to point number 5, we should hurry to bury the deceased. Yeah, it's one of those things we should not delay burying the deceased. Yeah, I believe there's one hadith where one saying, or maybe Imam Nawawi mentioned, one of the things that we don't delay the salah and the burying of the dead. So that's why you'll see usually in Islam and the Sharia, people are buried usually within 24 hours. When you hear some of these kuffar, especially some of these famous kuffar, I remember when that woman Margaret Thatcher died, and they buried her something like a week later. Obviously, my dear Muslims, subhanAllah, we're Muslims, we should rush the burial and not delay it without a valid permit. Also, point number 6, bury him in the place or area of death. Yeah. Some people, they have this thing, and again I'll mention a true story where common, like when maybe someone, he's from Bangladesh for example, and he's living in the UK and he passes away. What many people they do, they fly the body back to Bangladesh to be buried. Rather, what should happen, my dear Muslim, bury them in the area where they passed away. Do not do this. And I'll tell you something to drill this in. There was a case of a Muslim woman who had passed away, and she had sons in the UK, and she had one son back in Bangladesh. And because that son, obviously he did not see his mum pass away, and they wanted to bury her back in Bangladesh, what they did, they flew the body back to Bangladesh. And anyone who's traveled somewhere like that from the UK, and I've done that a few times, even the journey for a living person is hardship. And there was something like 16 hours on the plane, or 16 hours total journey time. It is hardship. And when they take the body, my dear Muslims, they don't put you where normal people sit. They might put you in like where with the luggage area, where it could be very hot, etc. And that is why they do have to do certain things to the body in order to make it travel that journey with it smelling. And what they did to this person, they cut the body and they filled it with, injected the veins and stuff with alcohol, in order to prevent obviously it smelling and rotting, etc. And I already mentioned the hadith. Prophet ﷺ said the dead feel as much pain as the living. That's why if you cut the body, you start injecting, you start hitting the body, that body will feel pain, my dear Muslim. That is why it's so important. We'll come to it later, that even when like we wash the body, you should take off things like watches and stuff, so you do not scratch the body. You could harm the person. We make sure the water is a good temperature. If the water is freezing cold, if the water is boiling, it will harm the person. Now imagine, subhanAllah, someone filled with the khamr, filled with alcohol, cut up, and taken on a many hours trip in a plane, in a cargo of a plane, subhanAllah, just so they could bury in the country where they were born, just because one of their relatives can see the body. This should not be done, my dear. Rather, if someone passed away wherever they are, should be buried in that locality. And do not take the body of your deceased back to the country maybe where they born and make the body go through this hardship. Inshallah, now we'll come on to the regards to washing the body. His will, first of all, his will should declare who he wants to wash him. So in your Islamic will, you should state who you want to wash you when you pass away. And if this person cannot do it, then the next person is the father. And if the father is unable to do so, then the deceased person's son should do it. If not, then those who are closer to him from his relatives. The wife is allowed to wash her husband's body too. Although the Shafi'is, who follow the Shafi'i madhab, they used to say that she cannot, as the marriage contract ends when the spouse passes away. However, there is evidence to state otherwise. So obviously when the Shafi'is, they got this opinion that once the person passes away, you're no longer husband and wife, so you're not, lawful to see each other and stuff, for example, in the hawra, etc. But obviously the strongest opinion is, you'll see from the evidence, inshallah, where husband can wash his wife's body, and wife can wash even the husband's body. So the above is the same, as we mentioned, same for a woman. Her will should declare who she wants to wash her body. If not, then her mother, then her daughter, and then the next of kin. The husband is allowed to wash his wife's body. And there's the evidence for this is that Ali ibn Abu Talib, he washed the body of his wife Fatima when she passed away. If a woman passes away and there are no other women to wash her body, she can be washed by the opposite sex, i.e. by a man. But they will make tayammum, the dry ablution, instead of ghusl, in order that no awra, i.e. the private parts, is exposed. And this is the same if a man dies and there are only women around. So in that case, the full ghusl will not be done. It's only the tayammum, like the dry ablution. The tayammum is done by touching the earth with your 2 hands and then wiping the face of the deceased. Then again touch the earth with both your palms and then wipe the hands from the right to the left. So in the same way, when you make tayammum, like if you can't use water for whatever reason, you do basically tayammum but for the deceased like that. It is forbidden to wash a kafir, and you should not participate in his funeral. So we don't give kafir ghusl, janazah, prayer, etc. Nothing. Just visit. All you can do is just visit at the beginning, i.e. if he or she is a relative for revert Muslims. But do not go to the church or elsewhere and return home immediately without to go to the cemetery. And there's a verse used to support this. Allah mentioned Surah Tawbah verse 84. And never pray for any, the funeral prayer, for any of the for anyone who, any of the like the hypocrites or the kuffar, even anyone who dies, nor stand at his grave. Certainly they have disbelieved in Allah and His Messenger and died while they were fasiqun. So if you remember, Allah SWT forbade even to pray the funeral prayer for the Abdullah bin Ubay, the munafiq. So my dear Muslims, we don't go to the funeral of the kuffar. We do not wash their body. And you have, I'm sure if you remember that, you remember Shaykh Anjim used to say, I believe it was Imam Shafi'i said that for the kuffar, you just chuck them in the forest, subhanAllah. No izzah for them. But just as for, subhanAllah, just as a point, just because it was maybe spread disease, he said, okay, you can bury them. If you read some of the statements of the ulama of the past, subhanAllah, many people, they're like, they quote Imam Shafi'i, Imam Malik. If you look at some of their statements regarding the kuffar, regarding jihad, etc., you'd be shocked, my dear Muslim. If you thought we were harsh and extreme, you read some of the quotes of those ulama of the past. So obviously for the kuffar, you can bury them. You can bury them, but there's no janazah prayer for them, there's no washing their body for them. And now inshallah I'll just briefly go through some of the points of how to wash the body. Firstly, remove all his clothes whilst keeping him covered with sheets. And cover the awra of the person. So the awra must always be covered. Point number 2, nobody should be there, as an audience. And neither should you speak about what you see. So maybe, my dear Muslim, while you're washing the body, maybe you might see certain marks on their body. They might even have a tattoo from Jahiliyyah or something, or maybe they have some disfigurement. We shouldn't speak about what we saw, We can go and narrate, when I was washing the body, he had this, he had that, he had a piercing there. Shouldn't even speak about stuff like this. Point number 3, sit him up first and apply light pressure on his stomach in order to take any excess excrement out. Wash the whole body. Point number 4, wash the whole body with warm water or water suitable for you, as they feel what you feel. So wash the body from the head and keep pressing on the stomach lightly. As I mentioned, my dear Muslim, that's why you need to check the water temperature with how it feel nice for you. You need to think whatever you're feeling, that's how the dead's going to feel. Obviously the water must be good temperature, not freezing, not very boiling, etc. Point number 5, make istinja. And it mentioned the brackets whilst wearing gloves with the left hand. So make istinja for the dead person. Point number 6, say the basmala, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and make wudu for him, the way you do for the salah. And do not excessively pour water into his mouth or nose. Okay. Inshallah, obviously there's a lot to maybe remember, but if anybody wants notes, I can pass on. But this is just should be a reminder for us all. Point number 7, wash him from the right to the left. The right side 3 times, then the left side 3 times with soapy water or water with crushed lotus leaves. It is recommended to wash the body in odd numbers, i.e. 3, 5 or 7 times, but 3 times is the sunnah. If anything comes out, i.e. from the excrement, from the back passage, then the area must be washed again. On the last wash, use camphor. Camphor is like a type of fragrance. And to use a sponge is acceptable, but do not rub hard. Yeah? So even the sponge that you get, be careful, make sure it's not one of those coarse ones, very rough. It is also allowed to brush his teeth with siwak. Also trim his moustache or nails if they are past the limit. Are they too long? So the limit with the nails, we say, basically if you put your hand like this, you shouldn't be able to see the person's nails. That's an indication it's too long, it goes beyond the tip. And with the moustache, we say is, if it goes beyond the lower lip. Yeah? If it goes beyond, it's not growing beyond, then it's too long, you should trim it. It is not allowed to remove any of his pubic hairs. Rather, neither is it allowed to cut his beard. It is not recommended to keep combing his hair. But for the woman, her hair should be divided into 3 sections, right, left and center. And then each section should be plaited. Yeah? Point number 8, it is recommended to dry the person with a towel. If after, for example, 7 times of washing him, something still keeps coming out from the back passage, excrement, you need to block the place with a substance. You need to block the place where the substance is coming out from, and wash the body again until it stops coming out. Then remove the object you have used to block him. For the shaheed of the battlefield, there is no washing or salatul janazah. It is only recommended for him, and there is no removing his clothes. Okay, so for the shaheed, he dies fighting to make the word of Allah the highest, not fighting for democracy, not fighting for nationalism, not fighting for the kuffar, to implement the kufr laws. The shaheed who dies, obviously for the sake of Allah, to make the word of Allah the highest, if he dies, obviously no washing is done for him, no salatul janazah is required for him, and he is buried in his clothes. He's buried in the clothes he was wearing. So that's just briefly about washing the body. Inshallah, now we'll just come on to some rulings regarding shrouding the body. The best shroud is that which is bought with his wealth. Okay? So if the deceased has some wealth, maybe doesn't have any shroud, it's better to buy the shroud with his own wealth. That's why sometimes what some people they do when they go Hajj, and the ihram that they use that same ihram to shroud their body when they pass away. If this is not possible, i.e. for example if the deceased has not left any wealth behind, then his family must take care of it, then his father, then his son, or if neither of these can take care, then the Amirul Mu'mineen must do so. If there is no Muslim ruler, and it mentions in the brackets, like the reality of today. That's why I said this talk was delivered many years ago. Obviously when there was no Khalifa, no Amirul Mu'mineen. Alhamdulillah, today there is. So if there is no Amirul Mu'mineen, then it's upon the because the Khalifa, he's like the guarantor for all the Muslims. Okay? He's the guarantor for all the Muslims. So obviously, if there is no Khalifa, or is not able to do it, then it's upon the Muslim community or close friends and family. They must take care of it. The shroud his body with 3 white sheets. These sheets should be tied with white strands at both ends of the body, i.e. at the head and feet, should also be tied. 7 knots are the maximum amount, though less are also acceptable. The 3 sheets is from the Sunnah, but more are acceptable, such as 5 and 7. And once the body is obviously shrouded, take the person to a place where the salah will be performed for him, Salatul Janazah. And this is an important point I have to seek clarification on today. It says here, this should not be at a mosque, with the exception of Masjid al-Haram in Mecca, and neither should it be in a cemetery. What is that? When I asked the Shaykh Hanjam this, what it means is like, it shouldn't be in the main place where people pray like the 5 daily salah. So it could be maybe a different section of the masjid, or it could be at the side of the masjid. Yeah? But it's not, shouldn't be like the main, you put the body in the main place where the imam stands, etc., and you're doing it there. Yeah? And also, it shouldn't be in the cemetery. Now, those of you who have been to Gardens of Peace, which is a cemetery in the UK, if you ever prayed the Salatul Janazah there, there's some rows where you pray there, but it's not inside the actual compound of the masjid, of the cemetery. So where all the people are buried, you can't take the body there and do the Salatul Janazah there. Rather, it has to be on the outside of where the actual cemetery is. So that's why in Gardens of Peace, so in case someone's thinking that, look, they're praying inside the cemetery, obviously there is a certain perimeter where it's not considered part of the cemetery. Yeah, so that's why the janazah is done there. Obviously, the other thing as well, my dear Muslims, is obviously there's great reward in going to the Salatul Janazah and also following the deceased to the burial. And what some people they do, they maybe go to the janazah, but they may be not able to go to the burial, etc. That's why you'll see in the UK what some people they do do the janazah maybe somewhere local where the actual cemetery is very far away. Yeah? As a way of, obviously the local people, they can get the reward, etc. But maybe in other places where the cemetery is very nearby, you know, people just do the Salatul Janazah near the cemetery. But one good thing here in the UK, if the cemetery you have to travel very far, like the other day, maybe like an hour journey, and you know many people are not able to make it, it's good that if you could do the Salatul Janazah somewhere local, so that people can attend and obviously get the reward, rather than take the deceased right next to the cemetery and do the thing. This is just something that I've noticed that would be a good practice. But that's only because of the reality we are here in the UK. Obviously, it's very hard sometimes to find a burial place. You might have to travel somewhere really far. But one of the things, my dear Muslim, as we'll come to, we're not allowed to bury the Muslims in the graveyards of the kuffar. It is not allowed. Yeah. It is also better for the deceased family to perform the Salatul Janazah for him, rather than a hired imam. In this way, the relatives would be much better and sincere for their loved one who has passed away. Yeah? So if one of your relatives has passed away, your father or your son, etc., it's better if your family relative, someone performs the prayer, rather than some random imam. Obviously it's permissible, but it's better if you can do it yourself, it's better. Now just coming on to inshallah about the Salatul Janazah. The body should be placed in front of the imam on the floor. if the deceased was a man, a male, then you pray at his head. The Imam would pray towards his head. And if it was a woman, you pray towards her midsection. Yeah, so the Imam would be facing her midsection. Yeah. If anything's not clear, just let me know, inshallah. There are 4 takbirat for the prayer. Obviously, after the first takbirat, recite Surah Al-Fatiha. After the second takbirat, or after the second, send peace and blessings upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After the third takbir, make sincere dua for the deceased, and after the fourth, make dua for yourself. Yeah, so that's just it's a reminder for many of us who have been already attended funerals, etc. The prayer should not be read aloud, and it should also be in the Arabic language. And make taslim. So once you finished, i.e. the last bit when you made dua for yourself, you follow the Imam there. So when the Imam he makes the taslim once to his right side, and doing the taslim once to the right is sufficient. Yeah, and however, but twice is also acceptable. There are some authentic narrations. So you might see, because I know many of you were used to doing the 2 taslim, so you might see someone in a Salatul Janazah just do 1 taslim to the right. This is not bid'ah, yeah. This is a valid opinion, and obviously the Shafi believes the strongest opinion. And if someone did 2 taslim to the right and the left, it's valid as well. It is also, so obviously if you attend Salatul Janazah, there's no iqama, there's no azan, there's no ruku, there's no sujood. It's all basically standing up. But there's the Imam, obviously, and you have to follow him. It is recommended to raise your hands whenever you make the takbir. Also, collective supplication is allowed after Salatul Janazah, but it is a bid'ah after the regular daily prayers. Yeah, so I'm sure you've seen certain messages you go to after every single prayer, people are waiting anxiously for the Imam to make the dua. To always be doing that, this is not from the Sunnah. Yeah, to do that. However, after you buried you might see after people are buried their dead, they make a collective supplication for the dead. Obviously, this is permissible. Also now, inshallah, just coming to the funeral procession. The body should be transported by a stretcher on 4 shoulders by men. It is also recommended to hurry, but not to rush and neither to be too slow. You're not like, when we say hurry, we don't mean like you're sprinting with the deceased, because you could end up dropping it. And in the same way, you don't walk in snail's pace. Yeah? People can walk behind, in front, or on the side of the funeral procession. All of these are acceptable. The car can be used to transport the body. I mentioned in brackets, but it should not be transported in a coffin. This is what the kuffar do, and it's not from the Sunnah. Yeah. So obviously, one of the things I'd say, sometimes you might see it in a coffin. Obviously, my dear Muslim, if it's already in the coffin and it's being transported, don't start jumping in front of the car. It's like, look, bid'ah, imitating the kuffar. Last thing what I do in a time like this is to start causing a big commotion, etc., and start, thinking that you're commanding good and forbidding evil, etc. And obviously, if it's something clear cut like kufr akbar, shirk akbar, fair enough. But bear in mind, on some of these things there could be difference of opinion as well. Yeah, and there could be a permit. So, but in general, it is the sunnah to carry the body on one of those stretchers, yeah, not to put it in a coffin, not to bury it in a coffin. That is not from the sunnah as well. So, however, this should not be treated as an actual procession like how the kuffar have a procession of cars towards the cemetery. Rather, it is only to transport the body to the cemetery if it is very far. Yeah. So, like I said, so some people, they might give the permit and say, look, the body has to travel very far distance. So it's only, they believe there's a permit, to put it in a coffin, just as a way of transporting the body safely, for example. But it should not be thought that, look, that is part of the Islamic burial, to have a coffin, put it in the coffin and bury the coffin, etc. That's not from the Sunnah. The car or vehicle should stop before it reaches the cemetery in order to allow people to walk with the body in procession. Yeah. So not to if the body is in the car, to drive right next to the place of the burial, the car. Rather, obviously, stop far away from the burial place, so that the body will be taken out and be carried to the burial place and people can follow behind, etc. Yeah, not to drive. Obviously, you might think for convenience, etc. But if you can, you should, even if it's long, a bit of a distance to walk, better to, so allow the people to follow the procession. Inshallah, now coming to the burial, it is prohibited to bury a Muslim in a deceased Muslim in a kafir cemetery, except in very extreme circumstances. Yeah. So in general, we don't bury, even in this life, subhanallah, we keep our distance from the kuffar unless we are coming for the sake of dawah, etc. Even in death, subhanallah, Muslims, we bury them in the Muslim graveyard. Kafir, they get buried in their own graveyards. The body should not be buried between Fajr and Dhuhr or during Maghrib time. It is only allowed to do so after sunset if it is great necessity. You can bury the body in the night, but it is better not to. But burying during sunset is completely not allowed. Yeah. It is recommended to bury the person after Dhuhr. So you see most of the janazah take place, Salatul Janazah is to bury after Dhuhr. The grave should be made in a way where the body will lie on its right side looking towards the Qibla. The grave should be dug at least 2 meters down, and then an oven-shaped hole should be made 1 arm span length from the bottom of the hole. This is called al-lahad, and it is the real prophetic way of burying. Now, what that is, I have no whiteboards. Basically, if you imagine this is the grave, there'll be a bit that comes in and it goes in like that, little edge of the thing cut out, kind of, where the body will be placed in there. Yeah. Obviously nowadays, those of you who have gone to burials, especially in the UK, they don't really do that. Instead, what they do, they kind of make a lahad where they get blocks of wood and they put the deceased on one edge of the grave, and they put planks of wood diagonally, and they do it like that. Obviously, it is permissible, but the correct sunnah, the best way is to dig that little bit inside to place the body tucked away. That's why I mentioned like an oven. The head should go in first from the foot of the grave, and the sunnah is to while you're putting the deceased in the grave, to say Bismillah wa ala millati Rasulillah, yeah? In the name of Allah, upon the way of the Messenger of Allah. The children of the deceased should not go into the grave, or if the deceased was a woman, her husband should be the one who receives her. No form of pillow should be made for his head. Actually, the recent janazah I did see a person saying the excess cloth that was from the shroud, saying roll it up and make a pillow for the. At the time I didn't know that, but it's not from Sunnah to do that. And likewise, the face should not be uncovered, except if he died whilst he was in ihram, i.e. during Hajj or Umrah. It is recommended for each person present during the burial to throw 3 handfuls of soil in the grave. Okay, so that's why you'll see people take turns to chuck some soil in the grave. The grave should not be level with the ground, nor should it be humped. It should be slightly higher than ground level, no more than a handspan. Yeah, so it shouldn't be completely flat, and it shouldn't have a big huge mountain of soil over it. No stones or flowers should be placed above the grave. And for a greater reason, no tombs or headstone. You see in the kuffar grave, they have these big cement headstones and a name, and this person born then, died this and so. This is not from the sunnah to do this. And to have, people go and put flowers on the graveyards and stuff. This is what the kuffar do. This is not from Islam. However, it is permissible to put a green branch or a plant on his grave, but no flowers, as this would be imitating the kuffar. It is recommended to give the deceased family food to eat. You should not go to their houses to eat. This is much disliked action, and it is a bid'ah, which many people do today. Obviously, my dear Muslims, subhanAllah, the sunnah, the deceased have just lost a loved one. We should try and bring food for them so they don't have to cook, they don't have to worry about cooking and stressing. But in fact, what nowadays people they do, it's like after the burial, everybody comes around and we're going to cook and everything for them. No, my dear Muslim, rather the people should just let them mourn their dead. They shouldn't be slaving away in the kitchen for people just keep on coming into the house, etc. If you're coming, then bring food for them. Don't expect them to cook for you. Women can visit the graveyard so as long they do not start wailing. However, they are not allowed to go during the actual burial of the person. Yeah, so they can follow the procession, etc., but they should not go during the actual burying of the person. It is not allowed to speak to a person in his grave, and neither is it allowed to visit particular graves of any person when you go to the graveyards. We visit the graveyards only to remember the hereafter, and not to visit any particular person. The Quran should not be recited whilst you are there, and neither should there be any form of salah. Praying in the cemetery is completely forbidden. It is allowed to visit the graveyards which consist of Muslims and kuffar, or just kuffar. However, if you go to the graveyard of the kuffar, it is not allowed to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive them. Obviously, and I put here, my dear Muslims, obviously, like I said, some of the stuff I'm mentioning I'm saying this is from the sunnah how to do it. Obviously, bear in mind, we're not living in Darul Islam. Yeah, and something people might not be aware of, something maybe because of the nature of the society, they might not even be able to do. Maybe they don't have even the facility, etc. So you got to bear in mind, my dear Muslim, that obviously something could maybe not be done because of the nature of this. We're living in Darul Kufr. Also, my dear Muslim, this is a very important point. It is very important that you make a will. It is very important that you make a will as soon as possible if you have not done so, especially in Darul Kufr. And the reason being, in Darul Kufr, my dear Muslim, you see, when someone passes away, many times, especially if the person, let's say, is a young person and just suddenly just drop dead, for example, what they'll do, they'll get suspicious and they want to do things like autopsy. They might cut up the body, etc. So because of the nature of Darul Kufr, and what they do, they might keep the body, they might freeze it or keep it in the fridge or whatever. See, under Islam, if you live in Darul Islam, autopsy would not be done. You see, and the body will be immediately released. But many times I've had cases where families, they fight with the hospital to get the body released ASAP for burial. So another thing as well, sometimes they might do autopsy to find out what the cause of death is, if they're a bit suspicious or whatever. Obviously, like I mentioned, when you cut the body, etc., the body will feel the pain. So that's why in Darul Kufr, in your will, you should state that I do not want any autopsy done to my body after I pass away. And also that my body should be immediately released to my family after death for burial. Now, obviously, again, Darul Kufr, my dear Muslim, they could turn around and say, oh no, we have to do autopsy. But in general, if you at least do that, sometimes what they do, they, as a way of respecting the wishes of the dead, they allow it. And that's why it will help your family easier to get your body released from like the hospital, etc., and to prevent any of your body being cut up for autopsy, anything like this. Also as well, to put in your will that I want my inheritance divided according to Islamic Sharia. Because what will happen sometimes is they won't take that into account, and the inheritance of the person may be divided according to the law of the land. And obviously the inheritance laws is different to the laws of Islam, and sometimes that causes great problems amongst the family after, especially when the family, they're maybe not practicing, or they're not practicing correctly, they don't understand the Islamic rules relating inheritance, and they rely on the kuffar inheritance laws. And obviously, my dear Muslims, that's not just. That's not just. The kuffar, they think because the boy gets double the share of the girl, they think it's unjust. But this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained. That's what's mentioned in the Quran. But they accuse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of oppression. So my dear Muslims, what is just and unjust is not dictated by David Cameron and his man-made law. But it's just and unjust decided by Quran and the Sunnah. But that's why we should put in our will that we want our inheritance done according to Islamic inheritance law. And you could even put maybe someone who you know is well knowledge in Islamic inheritance, for them to make sure it is done correctly. Inshallah, just to conclude, obviously this is what we mentioned today is some general rules, my dear Muslim. Obviously there's many other things that could be talked about in terms of fiqh, but this is a general overview, inshallah, and it's a lot of the stuff we already know, and it's a reminder for us. And also, just in conclusion, I'll just say, obviously if you have a loved one passed away, obviously, my dear Muslims, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the one that gives life and takes life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the one, He takes back what He already belongs to Him. Don't become obviously like some kuffar. Many of them, you see, they stop believing in God because a loved one passed away. Subhanallah. One day the death was going to come to them. Are you going to stop believing in Allah because a loved one passed away? So obviously, my dear Muslim, you cannot want the person, Allah is take the life taken away. What you need to rather be focused on how you can help that person, how you can help that loved one of yours. So one of the things you can do is make dua for them. If you remember, I think a couple of weeks back we mentioned about a man who will come on the Day of Judgment and he will given a high status in Jannah. And he will ask, like, how did I end up in this high status in Jannah? And he mentioned because of your children that used to make dua for you. So one of the good things we can do, help them, is make dua for them. We can give sadaqah, charity on behalf of them. We can pay their debts. Pay their debts. If they had outstanding fasts, obligatory fasts, we can even fast for them. Obviously, not for their sake, we only obviously fast for the sake of Allah, but we fast for the sake of Allah, but with the intent of the reward for that person. And also, my dear Muslim, remember that the shaheed, he can intercede for 60 members of his family. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all a good death, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase us in knowledge and allow us to all to have a proper Islamic burial, however way we may pass away. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive all the Muslims who have passed away, and all those who come after us who passed away. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give I don't know if the brother will mind mentioning his name, but Allah give his father the highest place in Jannah, inshallah. Jazakallah khair, brothers and sisters, for listening. Inshallah, that brings us to the end.